My name is Laura Stevens, and my experience with Annabelle is something that has haunted me for decades. This is not a tale I share lightly, as recounting it still brings shivers down my spine. However, for those who dare to listen, I feel it is a story that must be told. The year was 1972, and it began with what seemed like an innocuous gift. I was a nursing student, living with my roommate, Angie, in a small, cramped apartment near our university in Connecticut. For my birthday that year, my mother gave me a vintage Raggedy Ann doll she had found in an antique shop. I remember opening the box and seeing the doll's familiar stitched smile and red yarn hair. It reminded me of a simpler time, of my childhood days, and I thought it would be a charming addition to our otherwise plain apartment. I named her Annabelle. The first few days after receiving Annabelle were uneventful. I placed her on my bed, and she stayed there, a silent guardian in my room. But then, small, inexplicable things began to happen. At first, it was subtle. Annabelle would shift positions slightly. I would leave her sitting up and come back to find her lying down. Angie and I laughed it off, attributing it to one of us accidentally moving her without realizing. But then, the changes in position became more pronounced. One morning, I left Annabelle on the couch and went to class. When I returned, she was sitting on my bed, her arms crossed and legs straight out, as if waiting for me. I asked Angie if she had moved the doll, but she swore she hadn't touched it. We started feeling uneasy, but still tried to rationalize it. Things took a darker turn when we began finding notes written in childish handwriting around the apartment. The notes read, "Help us," and "Help Louisiana." Louisiana was Angie's boyfriend, who often stayed over. The paper these notes were written on was parchment, something neither of us owned. These messages were disturbing and left us both feeling increasingly anxious. One night, Lou stayed over and had a terrifying experience. He woke up in the middle of the night, paralyzed and unable to move. He saw Annabelle at the foot of the bed and felt a pressure on his chest, as if someone was trying to strangle him. When he finally managed to move and jumped out of bed, he was convinced that the doll was responsible. The very next day, Lou urged Angie and me to get rid of Annabelle. His pleas were desperate, and although I was still somewhat skeptical, I couldn't deny the growing fear that was gnawing at me. It was then that Angie suggested we contact a medium. The medium we found was a kind, older woman who had dealt with such cases before. She agreed to come over and conduct a seance to try to communicate with whatever was causing the disturbances. The seance was an eerie experience. The medium held our hands and closed her eyes, whispering to the spirit world. After a few tense moments, she spoke. She told us that the spirit of a young girl named Annabelle Higgins had taken residence in the doll. Annabelle had died tragically in the area where our apartment complex now stood. She felt comfort in our presence and wanted to stay with us. Feeling sympathy for the spirit of a young girl, Angie and I decided to keep the doll, thinking we were helping a lost soul find peace. Lou, however, remained unconvinced and continued to urge us to get rid of the doll. Despite our good intentions, the situation grew increasingly worse. Lou's experiences became more violent. He was plagued by nightmares and physical attacks, often waking up with scratches and bruises. One night, he was woken up by a searing pain in his chest and saw what he described as the shadowy figure of a man looming over him, with Annabelle sitting in the corner of the room, watching. It was at this point that we decided to seek professional help. We contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren, renowned paranormal investigators, known for their work with haunted objects and demonic entities. When they arrived at our apartment, the atmosphere felt charged with an almost tangible malevolence. After listening to our story and conducting their investigation, the Warrens delivered news that chilled us to the bone. They explained that the doll was not inhabited by the spirit of a young girl, but by an inhuman demonic entity. This demon used the guise of an innocent child to gain our trust and ultimately aimed to possess one of us. The Warrens arranged for a priest to perform an exorcism on our apartment to cleanse it of any malevolent presence. The ritual was intense, with prayers and holy water. As the priest conducted the exorcism, the atmosphere in the apartment grew increasingly oppressive. At one point, Annabelle seemed to move on her own, her head tilting slightly, which caused us all to gasp in unison. After what felt like hours, the exorcism was declared a success. The Warrens took Annabelle with them, promising to keep her safely contained. The drive back to their home was fraught with danger. Their car swerved erratically, the brakes failed multiple times, and they narrowly avoided several accidents. It wasn't until Ed doused the doll with holy water that the disturbances ceased, allowing them to complete their journey. Annabelle was placed in a glass case in the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut. The case was inscribed with a warning: positively do not open despite the containment. Annabelle's influence was still felt. The museum itself became a hotspot for paranormal activity, and visitors often reported feeling uneasy or experiencing strange phenomena in the doll's presence. One particularly harrowing story involves a young man who visited the museum with his girlfriend. Mocking the doll and daring it to do its worst, he tapped on the glass case. On their way home, the young couple lost control of their motorcycle, crashing into a tree. The young man died instantly, and his girlfriend survived but was hospitalized for months. She later claimed that they had been laughing about the doll just before the accident. Life gradually returned to normal for Angie, Lou, and me after Annabelle was taken away. However, the experience left an indelible mark on all of us. Lou and Angie eventually broke up, and Angie moved out soon after. As for me, I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. Every creak and shadow reminded me of the horror we had endured. I finished nursing school and moved to another state, hoping to leave the memories of Annabelle behind. But the story doesn't end there. Every now and then, I would hear about the Warrens and their museum. Annabelle's legend continued to grow, inspiring books, documentaries, and movies. Annabelle remains one of the most famous and terrifying cases of paranormal activity. The doll, with its stitched smile and innocent appearance, continues to invoke fear and curiosity. The Warrens' work in containing and studying Annabelle highlights the thin veil between our world and the supernatural, reminding us that some things are best left undisturbed. The legacy of Annabelle serves as a reminder that curiosity can lead to peril, and the boundaries of our understanding are often marked by shadows that conceal far more than they reveal. In the end, Annabelle is not just a doll, she is a gateway to a world where the line between the living and the dead is perilously thin, and where malevolent forces patiently await their next victim. As I share this story, I feel a mixture of relief and dread. Relief, because the tale is finally told in its entirety. Dread, because recounting it brings back memories of the fear and helplessness we felt. Annabelle may be locked away, but her influence lingers. She is a stark reminder that there are things in this world that defy explanation, things that lurk in the shadows, waiting for the unwary. So, if you ever find yourself in the presence of an old, seemingly innocent doll, remember Annabelle's story. Some gifts are better left unopened, and some mysteries are better left unsolved. As for me, I have learned to live with the shadows of my past, always mindful of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. If you want to see more horror stories, please like the video, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us, thank you, and see you in the next videos.